Aphasia is a communication disorder which commonly affects reading, writing, speaking, and listening. There are about 2.6 million people with aphasia in North America, more than other common conditions such as multiple sclerosis or Parkinson's disease. Yet many people have never heard of aphasia or understand how to support those with it. My guest today is a 3-time stroke survivor, nationally known author, and public speaker. He is a board member and the president for Aphasia Nation, Inc., a nonprofit dedicated to raising worldwide awareness about aphasia, including the need for persistent and intensive language activities that induce neuroplasticity for lifelong learning and recovery. It is my honor to welcome Dr. Thomas Broussard.
Thank you, Allison, and thank you to the MnCAN community.
Tell us about neuroplasticity. What have you learned about the process of aphasia recovery?
What have I learned? All of us who are on the call either are connected to stroke and aphasia one way or the other. And in my particular case, I learned about neuroplasticity the same way I learned how I learned, basically. But that took time. It takes years to begin to understand how that really works. But as I was considering what was happening, because I knew I was getting better after another couple of years, I began to also understand how I got better, what made me get better. And that's when I understood that all of the activities I had been doing literally for years, because a lot of it was therapeutic and it was habitual. So I didn't know that it was therapeutic, actually, until all that time went by and I began to understand that the activities themselves actually convert thought and cognitive activities, all that reading, writing, and speaking, into new brain matter. And that is what plasticity does. It really does convert those the stimulation really that comes from those activities into new brain matter. And that's how it happened. And it's happening for you. It happens to us every single day. When we have our classes, our groups, we learn something new. Clearly, that means to learn something new means you have grown new dendrites and synapses. So yeah, that's how it works.
I love that. Do you have any advice on how to motivate oneself or others to engage in meaningful life activities that support functional changes?
Again, all of us have been through this before, meaning us with stroke and aphasia, as well as our family and friends and our therapists. So motivation is always a big deal. And as the therapists have told us, there's these 5 rules for recovery. And I remember them telling that to me before, and it shows up in all my books now. Number 1 is motivation. Number 2, practice. 3, practice. 4, practice. 5, practice. So obviously, you have to be motivated. The interesting thing is that nobody can tell you to be motivated. I want you to be motivated. You know, that doesn't work. It's like telling your kid, I want you to be motivated. Yeah, right. I'm running away now, you know. So the interesting thing, though, is to come to understand, as the therapist will tell you, that what motivated you before, right? Before your stroke, what made you who you are now, successful at whatever you've been doing up until this point, whatever that was, go back in time, think about what had been so motivated before. Just the fact that you are thinking your way back in time, again, that's that conversion that happens with thought and cognitive activities, creating new brain matter. You go back in time, what made you motivated that was successful in your life, whatever it might be, you know, a new job, a new degree, new language, a new relationship, all of that provides the stimulation that then allows motivation to flourish, because motivation comes when you are interested, right? So you don't have to be necessarily motivated as much as you just have to be interested. What are you interested in? Reading this, hearing from that, listening to this music, whatever it might be. Now you have to go forward and say, okay, now if I have to be motivated, and I happen to like this, this, and this, I'll just do that. And in my case, it was just by my habit that I did what I used to do, not really realizing that everything I was doing was therapeutic. So you really have to do what you used to do, what you like to do, what you're interested in, and the rest will take you from there. But you do have to think about that and come back with that memory and use it going forward.
How true. Great points. What kind of education and resources should every hospital provide at discharge to individuals with aphasia and their family?
That's a really, really, really good question. Again, I'm very lucky because I saved all the evidence of what had happened to me. So, and that was very interesting because I wrote what turned out to be a 500-page diary. Most people say, whoever writes anything for 500 pages? Well, I didn't do it because it was therapeutic. I just thought I should keep track, not realizing that what I was writing didn't make any sense. I recorded myself with my phone, same thing. I'll listen to it. I thought, I know I've been told something's wrong, but I'm going to listen to it. It sounded fine to me. I did that for 2 years, almost every day. So I didn't realize that all of those activities provided me with a therapeutic impetus that would allow me to get better. Now what happens when that's when I found out when I was discharged from the hospital, I got one piece of paper and it had this one line about all the brain diseases and disorders, including one line about aphasia. Not that I could understand that at the time. It was a year later when I still had that piece of paper. But since then, I found out that many people leave hospitals without any information about stroke and or aphasia. And that's when I realized, oh, there's a gap here in the healthcare system, because if you're discharged with stroke people, that they've done a really good job to make sure that you're stabilized, healthy, and ready to go to whatever the next would be. What they haven't done, though, is provide you with the information, basically the tools to take all those next steps, including the therapeutic community that's waiting for you. But sometimes the waiting can be a gap in between. So when you leave, most people, unless they go right to a rehab facility, you go home. And then you get your opportunity to go on to your rehab community. But unfortunately, a lot of people choose not to go anywhere. They stay at home, right? So they have no information. As I was there for a month, no information. So they have to provide stroke and aphasia information at the moment you are discharged. If you don't get that, you go home without really understanding how to connect with the stroke and aphasia world, because that word is so odd. This world of aphasia, that people don't know anything about it. People really do think it's a new religion, a new meal, a new country, because it doesn't connect the same way. So it has to be stroke and aphasia. It has to come out at discharge with aphasia, and not provide, like a lot of hospitals don't provide any information. It's not in the lexicon in their website at all about aphasia, nothing. So there's a lot of information about stroke. Some even give a lot of information about packets about stroke when they leave, right? Nothing about aphasia, not yet realizing that they, meaning the hospitals, are providing people with stroke and aphasia with 30 to 40% of those people that are stroke people leaving with aphasia with no information. So it's a huge fraction of their discharged community that also have aphasia, huge component if it's 30, 40%. So yes, we are working hard at Aphasia Nation to raise aphasia awareness, and not just because that's a fun thing to do. We are working hard with the system, finding out the right people within those systems to say, okay, here's what we need to do. And we have thousands and thousands of hospitals that do not provide the lexicon of aphasia, even though you have SLPs there, working there, it still hasn't made it in yet. So that really what you need to do when you're discharged is get the information, and Aphasia Nation is making sure you get that, because we are working with those hospitals to make sure that they need to do it as well. So that is what we are all about, what I'm all about. And again, I got this job because I was a dean before. I couldn't be that dean anymore. But as I got better, I figured out, well, I got to do something that would be useful. And it turns out that this incredibly useful when I began to see how much was still lacking. So thank you again for that great question, Allison.
What a wealth of information that you have. And I absolutely agree, we can do better. My last question for you today, what's one metaphor speech therapists should always share with people who have aphasia and their care partners?
Another good question. Some of you might know about my 5th book that just came out a couple of months ago, and it's all about metaphors. When I was doing my walking and recording myself and writing in my diary, I was going back in time and thinking about who I was before. And I was an engineer and building ships for the Navy, and always thought about how I could put things together, right? How do you build something together to make a ship out of pieces of steel? And as I considered these various metaphors that would be helpful for me to understand how it was that I got better, came up and wrote that book with 15 chapters about all of these metaphors that helps you better understand how the brain works. And there are lots and lots of good metaphors in there. I like all of them, actually. Like having my kids, you like all your kids, although some are more favorite than others. But in this particular case, there's one in particular that people might not know about. It's called coppicing trees. And I'll show you this picture of it too. Coppicing trees, if I'm holding it in a good place. And what a great metaphor this is, because when you cut down a tree, particularly with coppicing trees, there's a certain method for making this work. You cut down that tree and you end up with a stump, and with the stump comes additional trees. So I didn't really understand. You get to see the image there. You cut it, there's a stump, and it grows. What I didn't understand about coppicing trees, I went to a Christmas tree farm last year with my grandkids to go out into the woods and cut down a tree. And through their barn, we saw they had signs there about coppicing trees. But I still didn't know what that was. It's sort of like, it could have been aphasia trees. I go, I have no idea what aphasia tree is. The same thing with coppicing trees. I had no idea. But when I got into the woods, I started to see stumps, literally stumps, with 2 Christmas trees. I mean, you could cut them off and take it home. They look just like a Christmas tree. And I looked at the 2 of them and I thought, holy mackerel, this is the same way it works with us in the brain, because I know all those cells were destroyed, but the remaining cells, the good cells, have that capacity to grow new trees, new dendrites, new what we call metaphorically branches and leaves. When it comes to photosynthesis, we convert, nature provides and converts light into new green leaves, right? Plasticity converts thought, might as well be sunlight, into new brain matter, right? So here's this metaphor of this stump, and I thought it was really just a stump. I didn't realize they could use it for any other reason. And it grew these 2 beautiful trees. And I went home. Well, actually the owner was there, and I told him, I said, I'm going to come back and take pictures of your trees. I found one. They actually cut off the other one. I wanted the 2 of them. They cut it off, so you just get the one in one of the pictures in the book. And I said, I'm pretty amazed about this. And I explained to him about aphasia, why his farm is such a great metaphor for how the brain works. And he thought that was pretty cool too. And I said, well, I'm going to write this book next year. And he said, okay. Many people say, okay, like you're really going to write a book. Obviously wrote the book. And I told him, I went back, I took the pictures. And when I come back next year, because it's a big Christmas fair around his barn, lots of people there, fairs type things, tents. I told him I would bring him a dozen copies, give them to him, and then he can then use that with part of his work with coppicing trees. And sure enough, he'll be able to open that up and probably sitting it there. People say, oh, that's coppicing trees. And you actually see a picture of his barn in the book. So he was very excited as a farmer. I was very excited as a nut farmer. As we say with metaphors, right? They come together with two completely different format idea of what we both now come to understand are pretty much the same when it comes to, quote, growing something that had been lost, or in his case, cut into a stump. So yes, I do like the coppicing tree. So now you have to go find that out. Put that right up there next to aphasia, because nobody knows about coppicing trees either. But thank you very much for that. That was a good one.
Tom, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your insights about aphasia recovery. Your passion and your energy for raising awareness about aphasia is inspiring. If you would like to learn more about Tom's work, go to aphasianation.org.